Hi everyone, Stuart here from Touch Loops, back with another video. This time we're going to be looking at vocals. Oftentimes I have go-to synths that I like to use and I get a bit tired of them, for pad sounds, lead sounds, and I've kind of always wished I had a better singing voice because I, as you're about to hear, do not. But I found workarounds. I found ways just using Ableton to pitch correct and chop up, process my voice and create pretty cool pads, leads, textures laid up with other synths or on their own to vary up my choice of sounds. So this is hopefully a pretty cool way of adding a bit of your own voice in. I'm using an Aston Origin microphone, but you can do this with a phone, iPhone, anything really. The idea is that you're trying to capture character and texture, your character and texture of your voice, even if you aren't pitch perfect or, like me, even close. So this is a raw recording I made. It's pretty horrible, but it's a pretty good place to start. And all I have is a tuner. So this is what I recorded to begin with. Yikes. Oof. So, yeah, terrible. so out of tune, so awful. But I was just trying to sing into this tuner. So I had the tuner in front of me and I was really just making different sounds and aiming as best I could to get to 0. I don't do that very often. Oh, and also trying to sing a C note. But it doesn't matter really where you start because we're going to be pitching and tuning so heavily. So there are my raw recordings. Very raw. You would never ever use them in a track as they are. But what I did do was chop out the bits I thought were the closest to being in tune. So another tuner just on another blank channel. And I started chopping. So that's pretty good there. Then this section here. So I chopped the bit that was drifting the most using Command E. And then I can control just those sections. I don't have to pitch the whole thing because I'm drifting in and out of tune so much. So actually I think this middle section is the only section that I haven't pitch corrected. By the way, so this is what it looks like now in the newest update of Ableton Suite. On the left here you've got semitones up and down. And then on the right you've got cents, plus 50 and minus 50, and at plus 50 you're halfway between two notes, semitone. Which is really useful because you can, Ableton, the tune here gives you a readout of how far off you actually are. So if we take this first section and I loop it, it's pretty clearly, it's in here because I've tuned it, but if I take off the correction I made here, you can hear immediately, it's about 20 cents sharp. So all I've done is I've come in and I've dragged it down. I think I dragged it down 25 cents. And now we're pretty green. Pretty good. The middle section of this performance was the closest to being in pitch without any correction. So I, like I said, Command E, chopped it out so I didn't process it. And then the section shortly afterwards, again, 25 sharp, so I brought it back down. And now we have a recording that's pretty even in pitch, which is perfect. That's all we need. There's a lot of noise and background hiss and hum because I'm recording very quietly because I don't have a strong voice. But all of that is welcome here because we're going to be using it to create texture. It's all about getting the real world in as much of it as you can. which is why iPhones can be so good, because you can get that compressed, crunchy sound from the wind around you or whatever. So let's keep going. That one, again, didn't require any pitch correction. It's just chopped out of a much larger, a larger performance. I'm just capturing the little bits that are in tune. Same here again, it looks like I started off in tune, then I drifted out by 20, so I just captured the bit that drifts, pitched it back up, and then the end was fine. So rather than... The thing we're avoiding here is with pitch correction software, which not everybody has, Melodyne, the Waves real-time tuner, the UAD stuff. It's real-time. It's bending the audio back into pitch as it plays. If you don't want to do that, because one, you may not have those plugins, but two, this way you can get in and chop those drifty parts out yourself and correct them just using the tuner. And if you already have Ableton, it's a free alternative. And it's not perfect at all. It's not going to be winning, not going to win Grammys from it, from just chopping out. But what it will do is give us a really good bass. Like that was pretty good. I didn't correct that because it's mostly green. I'm not looking for perfect pitch. I'm looking for performance and character that isn't so far out of tune that it can't be used in a track. So here again, first section was close enough for me, and then it drifted out by 13 around here, so I chopped it. And anyway, I've said that enough. So next step is I duplicated this track and I just comped these together so that they become single files rather than these chopped ones. And you do that by pressing Command J, consolidating, and that will take these 3 files and make them into one, which is great because from here now we can load up a sampler or simpler. I can't remember which one this one is. I think this is a sampler. Yeah, sampler. So I took this first one, or this second one. Yep, Audio 6, and I'll show you. So Command Shift T to load up a new MIDI track with nothing on it. And then with that MIDI track highlighted, so we can see, this is just the chain that I have on all my channels when I load up a new one, just EQ, Autopan, Utility, Compressor, and then LFO tool, but we don't need that, and we may well not need any of this. But with this channel selected, you can grab and hold this file we've created and just drag it here, and it will create a sampler for you. So that's what I did. And now we can play this back with MIDI. This is taken from our MIDI anthology collection. Let's see how that sounds right away. Pretty cool, characterful, interesting, clearly isn't a synth, and all I've really done is control the parameters of playback. So in the sampler window, I've set the start a little further along than the start of the recording, because this is where I sort of liked it the most. We're in loop mode, so as default it will be in snap mode, but let's turn loop mode on. So the file will play from the start here, or where the MIDI clip starts. It'll start playing the file here, and then it will just keep looping it. So as default, it will look like this. And I was like, okay, get rid of the start, get rid of that noise at the end. This is the section I like the most from the recording, so let's loop 87% of it. We added some fades at the start and end to avoid pops, and this is quite important. I decided that I only wanted 4 instances of this sample playing at once. Much more, you can go all the way up to 32, but I found more than 4. Most of the chords I'm using are 4-note. Well, in this instance, there's a lot of notes, but I only really want to hear 4 notes at a time before everything starts to get really, really muddy, because we're using a vocal sample. There's lots of noise. in the raw recording, it's not like a pure sine wave that you can stack up and up and up. So I wanted 4, re-trigger mode on, which means it will play the sample back again from the start. Some release, about 7 seconds of release, so we don't get a dead cut off when the MIDI ends. Rolled off a bit of the attack, so we lose some of that poppiness. And then in control mode, this is where you can get kind of really weird with it. So this is a filter on the left here, which I haven't used. And then in the middle, we have an LFO, and on the right, we have the amplitude and pitch envelopes. We're going to stick with amplitude. Let's turn some of this off. So, random pan here. Random pan is really useful because it will randomly pan each new sample playback when the MIDI plays. So you get free panning. So let's turn that up and see. And it really helps separate out the voice. Spread will also do that. So we've created a bit of space, bit of definition between the notes because they're now dancing around our ears. But there's also this glide function, which you can, it works most of the time for me. It can be tricky because we're already using audio that isn't perfectly in pitch. And introducing glide and portamento is obviously going to affect the pitch further, but it can work really well. So if we turn portamento on, we can start to get some really weird, like there. Starting to sound a little bit more like a synth. Pretty cool. So that's really nice. Let's try pushing the voices up. Let's push the voices up to 8, because looking at the MIDI here, I mean, there's a lot at this point here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bits of MIDI playing at once. So let's push it a little harder. Really, really cool. And that, as a reminder, is from, I think, this. From this. Terrible initial recording. This middle window here in Sampler is the LFO. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but you can alter the pitch further, envelope pan. Pretty great. You can hear a bit of reverb there. I'm just sending it to a stock Ableton reverb. And then from there's some EQ, because this area here is where most of our voice is stacking up. So that needs to be controlled, or it can become just mud, really. Some gentle compression, a bit warmer, which is a preset from within the saturator audio effect. And then a vocoder on the end here. Well, not quite the end, but let's talk about the vocoder real quick. So I've got it set to pitch tracking with a saw wave, and it's an octave higher. So it's an octave higher than what's playing back here. And it really is just to add a little bit of texture. And again, with a vocoder, you can choose which frequencies you want to hear more of or less of. So I've just pulled down these lower frequencies because that's where we're getting a lot of sound stacking up. And then added a little bit of chorus ensemble on at the end, just to, again, give it some character, some spread. And then pop to beat on it. So let's try it again. Similar processing, really. We've done the same thing. I've grabbed a bit of the recording I like, put some fades on it so we don't get any pops as it loops around. Dialed in a bit of an attack, decay, sustain, release that I like, and then mostly the same here. We do have portamento on this one. I've rolled off a lot of the low end because those things stack up, and that's it. So this is quite raw sounding. What I have done though here is stacked it up with a sample from a different singer, a different voice, and this is taken from our Ethereal Harmonies pack, which is a vocal pack we released. And I found within that a note that I liked from the one shots. It's a high C here. You can really hear how the same processing with a really good singer can sound amazing. And again, that's just from one single one-shot note. But I've stacked them up together, my voice and the voice from the pack. Let's run them through some reverb. Panned them apart from each other, so again, we're trying to create separation. Build a beat around it. There's a little bit of portamento on, you can push that harder. Really cool. So yeah, pretty cool. Let's keep it going. Let's look at this soloed first, and then we'll talk about it. So in this instance, it's a very short part of this recording, and what I have done is this was the sampler that loaded up the same way as before. I then pressed Command G, which creates a group. Here, you can see it's grouped it, and I pressed Command D and I duplicated it. So now we have two instances of this same piece of audio in one group. So this one bit of MIDI here is now controlling two samplers at the same time, which is really, really useful because you can pitch one of them down an octave. So this note originally that I sung loosely, was a G. So I've pitched that back down to a middle C so that the MIDI makes sense. And then I've duplicated it and dropped that down 19 semitones. So an octave plus the 7 to take it from a G to a C. A little bit of pitch correction again, 15 cents. So constantly pitch correcting, constantly getting it to a place that we like. And then one plays over the other. So if I get rid of one for a second, and then this is the octave below. What's also great, you may have noticed, is that now we have two instances of sampler playing back the same sample at different octaves. We can process them separately. So the lower octave one here, I've rolled a lot of the top end off because you just don't need it. Its amplitude is shaped slightly differently. It loops slightly differently. There's more of a fade, a longer start. So that's just the MIDI playing, and then I thought, why not put an arpeggiator in front of all of this as well, playing an octave above. You know, get some really cool stuff going on. Beyond that, an EQ just to control those low frequencies again. Another vocoder that's creating some noise. This is just a preset called Noise Drums, which is pretty cool. And then another tuner. I mean, this is all over the place, but it's not so out of tune that it's unbearable to listen to, but it's out of tune enough that, again, it creates interest. It piques your ear. I've laid it up with a wavetable that's doing exactly the same thing. Just playing a square wave, rolled a bit of the top off, a bit of unison noise. And there you go. Pretty cool sound. Stacked those up with some more loops. Let's look at one more. This is the last recording I made, this one here. Using some Midi again from one of our previous packs. Pretty cool. So here we're really using the LFO section of Sampler. We haven't really rolled any of the high frequencies off. I've again set it to loop mode and taken a bit of the start off, quite a lot of fade, a very short release. Loop mode, 8 voices, but then in controls here, as well as the usual random pan, spread, things like that, I've set the LFO to a sawtooth wave and taken it from hertz to synced with the tempo to 16ths, and then using the volume parameter you can create basically a synth, but with my badly recorded voice. Rolled some of the low end off, another tuner just to keep an eye on it, some erosion, which adds a nice amount of white noise in. Same with the vinyl distortion, we're adding, that's where the gritty noise sound is coming from. Let's take those off just so you can hear. And a bit of glue compression just to keep it all together, and it's being sent to that same stock reverb. So then I thought, Ableton has a bunch of its own vocal samples and vocal synths within its own library. So I loaded one of those up here. Sounds, I guess, voices. Oh, and here we go. There's just a bunch of... I mean, this is basically what we're doing, but with our own voices. So if, you scrub around here until you find the one you like. I liked this one. Exactly the same MIDI on top. And I loaded up a gate and the sidechain for that gate. So without the gate. The sidechain for the gate is coming from our rhythm that we're creating here with this LFO. So together. And I haven't touched this preset here. This is just how it is. But now we're layering up, because I think these recordings are really, really great, and they almost have like a synthy quality to them anyway. Plus cut off and things pre-prepared, which is really useful. There's all these extra things here that are just part of my default loadout, but I'm not really doing anything with them. I am just pulling out some of the low end again. So they're being played together. And then again, I just added a wavetable and a beat. And there you go. So hopefully that's given you some inspiration to just start recording your own voice, regardless of your singing ability. This whole session here, I'm going to export out a lot of it, and we're going to give it away in a free pack. There's a link below for that so that you can use these same recordings. I probably won't include this raw one because nobody wants that. But some of these that I've chopped and tuned already, we'll put those in there, as well as I'll export out a lot of these loops that I've made because they're quite interesting, as well as all these beats and bass lines and things from our other packs, so that you can have this as a pack to start with and to get going with. So thanks everyone. I hope that's been useful, and I'll see you next time.